Welcome to a Simple Therapy podcast. Real conversations, brave stories, and simple, soulful insights for therapists and anyone on a healing journey. I'm Sindee Gozansky, licensed therapist, supervisor, and a fellow human figuring it out too. Around here, we believe healing doesn't have to be complicated, and that leading with your heart still matters. We talk about what it really means to be human in and out of the therapy room. You'll hear from therapists, mental health professionals, and people courageously sharing their personal healing journeys. Because whether you're the therapist or the client, we're all human here. Let's keep it simple and keep showing up. Hello, and welcome to a Simple Therapy podcast. I'm Sindee Gozansky, your host. Today's conversation is one that is both deeply personal and incredibly important for our field. Because as therapists, we don't just bring our training into the room. We bring our identities, our histories, our cultures, and the parts of us that are still growing. Today, I'm joined by a licensed professional counselor and supervisor whose work is grounded in trauma-informed, culturally responsive, and justice-oriented care. Katie has been a therapist since 2008. And as a Vietnamese refugee, she brings a powerful lens to the work, integrating authenticity, somatic healing, and collective care, while also showing up with a level of authenticity in the therapy room that so many of us long for. Really excited to have you here. Welcome to the podcast, Katie.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sindee. I'm really excited to be here. I love to have these opportunities to share some of the work that I do and be able to join other therapists to kind of grow with each other. I think we're constantly growing, and that's exciting. And it's also one of the things I love about this field.
I second that for sure. I really imagine we're going to talk around the subjects of like authenticity, cultural attunement, and that emotional reality of being a therapist.
Yeah.
And so let's start there in kind of going back to your inspiration. What shaped your work in becoming a therapist? Like, how did your lived experience as an immigrant and whatever else shape your work into becoming a therapist?
Yeah. So, I get asked that question, and my response is always, I think, really interesting because I really don't feel like I chose the field. I feel like the field chose me. I really, growing up so a little bit of a backstory is that I was born in Vietnam, and my parents were born right before the war started, which started around 1955. So I was born shortly after the war ended. It ended in 75. So after the war ended, my parents got married and then had my brother and then had me, and we all escaped Vietnam. I was about 18 months old when we left Vietnam, stayed at a couple of different refugee camps. And when I got to America, I was 2.5, almost 3 years old. So my roots are in Vietnam. I grew up in Houston, Texas. And so a lot of my childhood experiences were revolved around the immigrant experience of growing up in a house where parents didn't speak English. They really were trying to work really hard to acculturate to this culture, to assimilate, to figure out how to make ends meet. School experiences were around with, spending a lot of time with other immigrant families. We kind of all, clusters together.
Right.
So those were really interesting experiences growing up, and just feeling that push and pull of trying to be more Americanized while being told that we had to maintain our roots. And so all of that, I always had a heart for my culture, but there was also a period of time where there was a lot of shame with the culture because I always felt like we weren't American enough. We didn't eat the foods that Americans ate. We didn't have the similar kind of practices. So there was some of those struggles. And, we can talk about emotions. Like, that was just never a part of the culture. It was all about physical survival. So I knew nothing about therapy. I knew it existed, and that was the extent of it. I knew people did therapy. That was always a white thing. It was never a, like a immigrant thing or an Asian thing. And even pursuing my degree in college, I didn't choose anything in therapy, I took one psychology class as an elective and I found it so interesting. So I decided I was going to take another one as another elective. And long story short, it pulled me in and I really enjoyed it, especially learning more about like family dynamics, learning more about different disorders and mental health and all the things that was just never talked about. But still, even then, and I decided I was going to go into psychology, but I wanted to maybe teach college or maybe do research. Never thought about going into therapy. And on the day that I graduated, in my, you know, how they have those fake diplomas that they hand you when you walk the
Oh,
stage? Well,
yeah.
wrapped inside the fake diploma was a pretty much almost a full scholarship for grad school to pursue a psychology degree.
Oh my gosh,
I never
Katie.
chose that. And what was really interesting was that I was about to move to Dallas. After I went to school in Houston, I was about to move to Dallas, and the scholarship was for a school in Fort Worth. So it was like it was always
Meant to
it was
be.
very surreal. It was very much almost like the universe is telling me this is what you're gonna do. So without really knowing a whole lot about actual therapy, without really having any experience with it, I went with it because I felt like, well, this is the signs that are pointing me in this direction. And so that's really, if I'm honest, that's what pulled me into the field. And the longer that I worked in, the longer I really developed a heart for it. So it worked in reverse for me. I didn't go into it with a passion. I went into it because I felt like that was where I was pulled to. And then the passion grew as I grew in the career.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that. And I love that how the passion grew as you did the
Hmm.
work. I think
Yeah.
that's true for us in other iterations too.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
we do this work, maybe you don't really like working with teens or couples, and then you do it,
Mhm.
and all of a sudden you're passionate about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
With grief or trauma,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
want to go back to something you said that just seems really important and also so moving. You said, we didn't talk about emotions. That wasn't part of it. Our
Hmm.
culture was about physical survival.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's as relevant today as when you were a kid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
Not that much has changed.
not that much has
Yeah.
changed. I think it's really important for listeners and therapists to keep that top of mind.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, when you think about the hierarchy of needs, physical survival is always the most fundamental. So when that is not being met, nothing else really matters. So, the more that I really, the longer I've lived, the more that I've come to study cultures and understand them is like so many cultures have a history of war and violence and having to just scramble to try to figure out life. And it was all about survival. That's why so many minority cultures really don't put emphasis on mental health. That
Mhm.
was historically considered more of a luxury. You don't think about mental health because why does that matter when your safety is being threatened every day? Why does it matter when you don't have enough food to eat? None of that matters. Um,
Yes.
and so, yeah, that's the historical context of it. But of course, mental health still applies. And so there's still such a need for that. And more so now in the society we live in, where a lot of people aren't struggling with physical survival. And so now there's more capacity to really look at, examine, and work on the mental health piece, which is just as important.
Yes, yes. And so then as you're able to do that, you're bringing
Mhm.
in the trauma-informed, the justice-informed,
Mhm.
the decolonization lens
Yeah. Yeah.
of people who are looking at their emotional world, but still have
Mhm.
these histories of
Mhm.
survival.
Yeah, yeah. You know what I find interesting is so many people, and I work with a lot of minority cultures. And what I find with these minority cultures is there's often so much guilt in wanting to work on their emotions. Whether that's because it's been communicated that you should just get over it or that it's not as important, but there's guilt with having mental health struggles. So, for example, if a Latino client comes in or a Black client comes in and they are struggling with depression, then they feel guilty. Like, what do I have to be depressed for? My parents struggle so much more than me, and they got through it. My grandparents got through. So there's this like historical message that's been ingrained in so many of us in in minority communities that we shouldn't be allowed to feel depression, anxiety. And so much of the work is in validating that the emotional struggle and making space to recognize why it is so difficult to even acknowledge that you have mental health issues, struggles with emotions, things like that, to really hold space for that, because a lot of people really don't know how to hold space for it. They just feel a lot of shame.
Yeah. Yeah. And that validation, I think my supervisees get sick of me for always saying, start with
Yeah,
validation.
I
Um,
absolutely do.
but you can't lose. And so if you start with validation, right, that it
Mhm.
makes sense, you feel guilty. Of course, you've been told these things all your life, or you've
Yeah,
seen grandparents or, aunts and uncles, the whole
you've heard
thing, the message,
stories. Yeah.
stories, it comes down.
Mhm.
So validating that and then creating that space and permission to
Mhm.
have a different experience.
Yeah. Yeah, permission to realize that, you know what? You don't have to worry about the same types of survival needs that historically your parents or grandparents have had to worry about. So there is more room to really focus on the higher level needs. And I do psychoeducation with the hierarchy of needs for people to see that. And that's something that I check myself with as well. Because I think when you're working with clients, we're all humans. So when we're working with our own clients, we have to do a lot of our own self reflection to make sure that we're grounded in our own reality and, checking to make sure that our own traumas and experiences don't hijack us.
Yes, right. Oh, we have so many different places we could go here. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
that's one of the things, like your your history and background. You're a clinician and a therapist now and a
Mhm.
supervisor, and you still have your culture and your immigrant history. And
Mhm.
so as you're working with somebody, you're navigating both.
Yeah, all of it.
Maybe speak on that a little bit.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and when I'm working with clients, I think on one hand, it's great to have certain lived experiences, because it provides me with the type of context for clients that can help make it make it easier to create a safer space. And I think any clinician who is authentic can create safe spaces for their clients, but it is a little bit more, I guess it flows a little bit easier when you have the lived experiences like your clients have. I think there's a natural flow that comes with that. So it's great to have that level of connection. At the same time, I also have to check to make sure I'm not allowing my own lived experiences to be projected into my clients or their experiences to affect my role as a clinician, to not cross those kinds of boundaries because it's so easy. For example, when they're talking about strict parents, or having the pressures of their culture, I can totally relate to that. When they're talking about the guilt they feel with having to choose between cultures. I totally relate to that. But I
Yeah.
have to also pull back and say, but their experiences are different from mine. Whether, because their family dynamics are different, because their upbringing is different. So there are parallels, but everybody's journey is unique. So having to constantly navigate through that, and like tuning in with my own body to make sure that I can recognize when and sometimes when I'm in sessions and a client says or does something that just triggers a little bit of a personal experience for me, I make note of that so that I can go back to that and validate that for myself. Is that, yeah, at that moment you were a little like emotionally charged because it did hit on a specific space for you, and that's okay. Right. So I have to do my own self soothing at times, my own validation.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you
Mhm.
so much because that's so vulnerable. And,
Mhm.
I want everyone to know, like, and Katie is a long time, very experienced therapist. And even she is doing this, noting self of therapist
Mhm.
countertransference, your own
Mhm.
experience of being, charged or activated a little bit
Yeah.
in session and then
Yeah.
using that. And this is how we grow, how we keep
Mhm.
growing and becoming even better therapists in
Mhm.
terms of like meeting our clients, serving
Yeah.
them, and, you know, understanding ourselves too, because we get we get the permission to get something
Mhm.
out of our work and have it be
Yeah, for
meaningful and
sure.
growthful.
For sure.
Hmm.
And I think every career, any career, you know, like we should grow in our careers, both individually and personally and professionally. So I don't think the field of mental health is an exception to that. We should be growing in both ways. And I think also being able to check ourselves keeps us authentic with clients too. Like sometimes I will tell my client, wow, when you said that, that really did something to me, and it is validating for them, and it helps them see me as a human. We're walking alongside each other. I'm not walking in front of you. I'm not the expert here. You're the expert of your own experiences, and I'm walking alongside with you. So the things that you say and do will also, I respond to that too. I'm attuned to that as well. I'm not ahead of you. I'm not beyond the pain or the hurt or the emotions that come with what you're sharing, what you're going through.
Mm. So beautifully said that you're alongside them.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
It resonates for both of us. I mean, just the other day, a client was sharing something with me that, I started tearing up and I said,
Mhm.
wow, I just named that. Wow, this really
Yeah.
touches me. I have
Mhm.
tears in my eyes as you say that. And you know what?
Yeah.
Like that's okay.
Mhm.
And as you were describing, really knowing what's yours and what's the client's, in
Mhm.
terms of like a multicultural context or,
Mhm.
your own experience. I think it's Katie, also as you were describing, you're navigating being a therapist and an immigrant, having all of the cultural experiences with your clients as they share
Mhm.
theirs, and how you can relate. I think we all experience this in a different
Mhm.
way. If we
Absolutely.
relate to something, we're not necessarily disclosing it, but we put that experience into like
Mhm.
our own sieve of ourselves. We know what
Yeah.
that feels like and we offer it back to them in a
Mhm.
way that's a reflection and see if it lands because it's
Yeah.
such a close experience, right?
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
say like, oh, you feel so in two separate worlds or you feel trapped because you remember like what you felt like and then
Right.
whatever the client goes with.
Mhm. And they can be different experiences completely, but the feeling can still be the same. And so that's what allows us to stay attuned with our clients. And then, whenever I have any kinds of charges within myself, where if a client is sharing something that even if I can't relate to, there's a part of me that really stays curious, and it allows me to stay curious. So if I don't have the experience, and if they're sharing something that doesn't I can't really connect with, I'm okay with that, because then I can say, well, help me understand more. Like, I'm really curious. And I think curiosity is so vital to the healing journey for our clients. We're helping them to be curious about their experiences, as well as how they've navigated through their own traumas, through their own journeys, what they've done, what they're capable of. Just staying curious, I think, is so much more powerful than looking at it through shame or through judgment, or like limiting in other ways. But curiosity opens doors, and I'd like to model that with clients. I'm going to be curious with you. I don't know what that's like. Help me to understand it.
Mhm. Yes, such
Hmm.
great nuggets here. Um, and when we're curious with our clients, you're
Hmm.
staying in the present moment, right? You're
Yes,
not
absolutely.
bringing in an agenda or trying to think of the next question or thing you're going to say. You're just
Yeah,
curious.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm. So we're kind of talking about this self of therapist in a way, and you say in your bio that you really show up with radical honesty. I love the
Mhm,
sound of
mhm.
that. As
Yeah,
a
yeah,
clinician and as a human. So how do you conceptualize this radical
yeah.
honesty?
I think the when it comes to radical honesty, it's being able to call out what a client is experiencing and validating that. So for example, when a client is feeling really uneasy, they're feeling really regulated because of I don't know, the state of the nation right now, right? With so many uncertainties, to be able to call that out, and name that for them, name it. I think so many times people have experiences and they don't really know how to name it, to call that out. Um, if somebody is, I'm trying to think of a really clear example. I'll use an example. I had a client who struggles with relationships and just always feeling shame because he, like has attraction toward women, but he feels really ashamed about that. And this is a Black male. And so we try to tie that to historically. Was it ever okay for Black men to be attracted to white women, or and so to call that out and say, what was that like with that ancestral trauma, with that historical context, what are you noticing, what are you feeling, and to really connect those dots and help him to see just how deep those pains go, and to be honest about that and not shy away from drawing those pieces together and helping them to be able to understand that this is deeper than just my like present experiences. Sometimes when I feel something that seems so shallow, seems so surface level, if I did a deeper dive, can I really be honest with what's deeper and what's really going on there? And so I like to do that with my clients, to be able to call things out with them and not shy away from things that maybe historically we've had to shy away from. We've had to avoid for survival. We've had to avoid, ignore, dismiss, and now we don't need to anymore. You're safe enough to be able to call it out
Yeah.
and
And so
speak up.
it loops right back to that safety and survival.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah. And we don't have to know the history. It's
Mm-mm.
your client who will tell you from
Mm,
their experience
yeah,
what their ancestral trauma
yeah,
is. They
yeah.
know.
And that's
They
where the
feel
curiosity,
it.
right? It's like if you were to sit with it, trace it back, when has it how does it feel familiar to you? You know, trace it all the way back, and not just within your own lifetime, but within your history. And so let them come up with the experiences and the awareness, and for them to connect the dots. My goal is to just help them open that door and for them to find what needs to be connected.
Today's episode is brought to you by Berries, the HIPAA compliant note taking platform that makes your therapy documentation effortless. I am using Berries now with my group practice, and it is amazing. Berries says goodbye to the burden of mental health notes using automated note creation. You simply record your notes or record your session, and the platform instantly transforms them into a fully customizable format. Plus, your recordings are not stored, ensuring complete privacy. Berries is personalized, affordable, and comes with an extremely generous trial period. And for listeners of this podcast, use the code Sindee50, that's SINDEE50, for $50 off your first month. With Berries, you can reclaim your time and focus on what matters most, your clients, not your notes. It's truly made me enjoy being a therapist again. I encourage you to check out the link in the show notes for Berries. Use my discount code Sindee50 and get started today. Yeah. These are all such good examples and snippets of bringing the like culturally responsive care, collective
Mhm.
care into the room. And I'd love for you to maybe just even define a little bit more what you mean by like the collective care, justice
Mhm.
oriented,
Mhm.
decolonized care,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
for therapy and probably also for mental health
Mhm.
system.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with saying that so much of like westernized therapy, westernized mental health practices focus a lot on the medical model, and it's about diagnosing and pathologizing. And historically, that's just not how we have approached care. When we think about connections, we think about healing mentally and emotional connection. It comes through food, it comes through dance, it comes through music, culture, even with medicine, right? It's not just about taking pills, it's not just about setting an appointment with a psychiatrist. Sometimes sometimes people don't have access to that. And that doesn't mean that they can't find healing. So in our more westernized, modern way of approaching mental health, we focus more on just the medical, get medication, go to therapy, self-care, do yoga, those kind, and that's not always what works. And that's not always practical for some people. So the collective piece of it is let's explore other things that might work for you. Let's explore how food and community, music, dance, understanding history, visiting nature. What are some medicinal practices that you can really try to understand that can be also helpful, also help you with your healing journey? That's
Yeah.
not limited to that. And let's pull away from pathologizing and looking at symptoms and diagnosis, and let's just understand your story. What have you experienced? What have you been through that's shaped who you are? Instead of just saying, well, I have bipolar. Let's understand what you have experienced that can lead to you feeling these different states of mind. And let's not look at symptoms, and let's just look at your experiences and helping you to learn, and how have you coped? How have these different ways of trying to cope protected you? How do we honor those parts of you that have shown up to protect you, instead of labeling them as bad, as like illnesses that need medication, that need, like a lifetime of therapy? Let's just not look at it that way. And with the justice oriented and decolonize, it's back to what we're talking about with a lot of validation, a lot of understanding that sometimes the systems that have been formed, not sometimes, the systems that have been formed to try to help us have not historically been formed to help people of color. So understanding that sometimes the systems are more harmful than they are helpful. So for example, when a client comes in and they're telling you their story of how they feel discriminated at work. Are we holding space for them? Are we validating that? Or are we saying, well, is that in your mind? Like, do you feel like that's really what's going on? And I've had so many clients talk to me about that, where they say, well, I would share with my clinician, like, I noticed these things, but then what they ask me instead is could it be something else? Is that really what's going on? Or maybe there's something else. Maybe you just got to look at it differently, rather than holding that space and saying, you know what? You're valid in feeling that way. Whether or not it's true is not so relevant. It's more how it makes you feel, what it's stirring up in you. And that is more justice oriented type of care, is not dismissing someone's experiences as, it's in your head, which, a lot of times I think with more westernized practices, we unintentionally can gaslight our clients by not holding the space for them when they're having certain experiences.
Yeah. And so that those two parts are so crucial. And, just even going back to like that collective care. I mean,
Mhm.
I got so excited as you were talking about
Yeah,
that because
yeah,
it's so expansive and it makes so much sense. And I think, we long for that, to have
mhm,
more of that experience here in the
yeah,
Western culture, because
yeah,
it's so isolating. And
mhm,
we all come from really more collective cultures, like when you get down to it.
mhm,
Um,
yeah,
what about, like maybe there's something spiritual, or there's,
mhm, mhm,
some natural thing
yeah, yeah,
really resonate, or just
yeah,
a dish, like how
yeah.
healing that could be.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, sometimes, like, if a client comes from a culture where everybody likes to get together on the weekends and sing karaoke and, do things like that, and it's like inviting them to allow that to happen again. What would it be like if you just allowed yourself to kind of tap back into that? Gather some friends, get with family, sing karaoke, hang out. What would that be like, instead of, scheduling a therapy session, instead of trying to meditate? What would it be like if you just let yourself, like, co-regulate with others, right? I think that within the collective um, approaches, there it's co-regulation, and our society focuses so much on self-regulation, doing things to self-care, things like that. And self-regulation absolutely is necessary and helpful and beneficial. But we need both. We need co-regulation and we need self-regulation. And the co-regulation comes from communities, comes from getting together with others similar to us or enjoy similar things as us. And we don't need to constantly just isolate and do individual kinds of things. We need group kinds of things, cultural community kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's so many key points here that I hope people go back and listen, and we'll make sure to like highlight them in the show notes. But that's so powerful. Think
Hmm.
about all of the kind of alone self-regulating tools that
Yeah,
therapists are taught in grad school. That was one of my questions.
absolutely.
What do we have to like unlearn from grad school? But here, Katie, you've really described these self-regulation tools are all over. You should do this, meditate,
Hmm.
or use
Hmm.
an app on your phone, or
Yes, yes. There's so many apps.
so many,
Yeah.
journal. And all of these things are great. But
Mhm.
again, what we're missing is the co-regulation. And,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
many couples struggle because we're supposed to co-regulate each other and, we're in different
Hmm.
rooms. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love that notion of community, and we're seeing some small
It's
changes
getting a
where
little bit better.
some, younger generations are joining more faith communities, and there's like little
Mhm.
bits of things where we're
Mhm.
seeing people going more into community or
Yeah,
going to a
yeah.
restaurant where they require you to put your phone down or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned phone. I feel like the introduction of technology and social media has really led to more isolation and more pulling away rather than coming together. I think that I mean you can't blame technology and all of that, but I think it's definitely a contributing factor. But yeah, I mean when we really think about it, we're all born needing to co-regulate. That's how we start out with regulation. Like a newborn infant doesn't self-regulate. They need their caregiver. They need the touch. They need the soothing, the comfort, and that's how we first learn regulation is through co-regulation. And so co-regulation is not inferior to self-regulation. They're both equally necessary. But somehow, I think over time we rank them as one is superior to the other. And I don't think that's true.
Right. Yes. Um, so going back to maybe what you're seeing as gaps or things that are missing in terms of therapist education.
Mhm, mhm.
We just talked about one primary point. Another, I think, is the justice oriented model.
Yeah, yeah.
What else have you noticed, because you supervise newer therapists as well?
Mhm, mhm, I do. Yeah, yeah. So, like I said, I feel like the Western systems of therapy is not as conducive to bringing healing for so many communities of color, and not just communities, but like marginalized communities as well. So whether they are of different gender or sexual orientation, or anything along anyone that is not doesn't fit into majority culture, women as well. So I feel like it's just not geared toward, and it's so much of the research hasn't even provided evidence that it helps communities of color or any kind of marginalized communities. So justice oriented is again holding a lot of space and a lot of validation for people when they're feeling discomfort, when they're feeling not heard and not understood, to be able to hold that space for them. And so and I know there's so much debate within the therapy world among clinicians about, do we bring politics into therapy rooms or not, but therapy is political. And so especially during a time when there's so much political divide, clients come in and they need to feel safe, and they're feeling threatened, they're feeling scared, and especially people who are like immigrants, they're feeling really scared because of what's going on. And so can I provide that justice oriented care for them to be able to recognize that, you know what, you don't feel safe right now. It's absolutely true. And it is scary, like to be able to sit with them with that, cry with them if you need to. I've had clients worry for me because I wasn't born in America. Like I had some of my clients were like, well, I get scared for you because what if something happens to you? And
Yeah.
see that. Yeah.
And how touching is that? Our clients really do care about us.
Yeah.
And also, they're saying, look, no one is immune. right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you're Asian, and so,
Mhm.
you sometimes don't feel safe
Mhm.
either.
Yeah, yeah. So I think providing education for clients and really other clinicians, I feel like this is not stuff we learn in grad school. We learn about, cultural, I don't know, being more culturally aware and cultural sensitivity, things like that. But we don't learn to be culturally curious, like we
Curious.
talk about culturally competent care and things like that. But there's so much that is not taught to us. And so therefore we can still unintentionally do harm or not be able to reach our clients at a deeper level. So I find that providing the education for clients and therapists in understanding that there's a whole justice system that isn't catering to communities of color, that they do still, no matter how much, how progressive a society seems to be, there we really haven't gone that far in terms of getting rid of prejudices and discriminations. There's so much microaggressions that go on. Now it's a lot more. It's not as subtle as it used to be, and it really never went anywhere. It just was a little bit more repressed, and now it's coming out to the surface more, things like that, and just holding space to validate so much of that for our clients, and for really for I think clinicians to understand that it's very much a reality for so many clients as well. That there is a political pull when it comes to this, because the system itself has done so much harm to so many people that we can't ignore that when we're trying to provide care for our clients, to acknowledge the damage that has been done through the years, through generations, to our clients. And how they are still having to struggle through that while being told that they should be grateful, while being told that they have equal rights and this, that, and the other, but that's not their full reality. That's just what it's said. That's what they're told, but that's not what they feel.
Yeah. Yeah. So important. And really, when the client is coming to you and talking about this, wanting to talk about that harm from the system or their mistrust or
Mhm.
their fear and the whole political thing, they're saying, we want to talk about this. So who are we to
Mhm.
not,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, to invite that
exactly.
in. Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
it doesn't have to be a big political debate, but it's again, it's validating that. It's that, yes, you are right. There is so much about what you're experiencing that does have political notes in it. We're not going to deny that. We're not going to dismiss it or minimize it either. It's very real. It's very much a huge factor in what you've experienced and what has been passed down through your family, through your generations, that still impact you today and what continues to affect us.
Exactly. Exactly. And, keep in mind too that there's a political climate here, but that is
Mhm.
then triggering all sorts of other kinds of
Absolutely.
historical political trauma that these people experienced,
Yeah.
years and centuries ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's
Mhm.
all connected and
Yeah,
it goes way, way back.
right. Katie, maybe just one more thing.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
so grateful to have you here, and you speak so articulately, but also in a way that's really accessible for us to understand. And I
Thank you.
really, really appreciate it. As you're talking about this, trying to be more culturally curious and attuned,
Mhm.
you mentioned like we can actually kind of like shift our therapy spaces a little to be more
Mhm.
culturally attuned.
Yeah.
Are there like concrete or specific examples you could give of what that would look like?
Allowing clients to share some of their experience. So I'll give a good example. Like I have a clinician. She's wonderful. I love her. She's a older white lady. Doesn't really know a whole lot about other kinds of cultures because that's just never been her experience. And so she recently started working with more minority clients, and I wanted her to have the experience. And so, I encourage her, ask questions, look at pictures that your clients want to share with you, videos, things like that. Let them share because that's them pouring themselves out. That's them letting you see these parts of them that really all come together at some point. And so, inviting inviting, I mean, her to be open to that, to be curious. And even like I took her to a different cultural, we had our Lunar New Year. So I took her to like different, like lion dancing and things like that. So
Yeah.
for her to have that exposure to see it. So when your clients are talking about, you understand what they're talking about, as therapists to allow ourselves to watch videos, to even ask clients, well, when you're talking about that, help me to understand it. Like, do you have a video? Do you have a song? Do you have things that you can help
Great.
me to be able to be exposed to so that I can really connect with you a little bit better? Right. Again, you're the expert of your own experiences, not me. I'm walking with you. And I'd like to share, I'd like you to share these things with me. So in that
That was a great
way,
example. Yeah.
yeah, in that way, I'm not being like, well, I know because I'm the professional. And so even though you're telling me these things about you, here's what I think you should. No, that's not it. Like, I don't know what you should do, but I can join you in trying to understand this together and figure this out together.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And you have a really diverse team in your practice, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I love my team. They're great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Um, so I guess maybe you've probably already kind of described it, but like one small way that therapists can be more culturally attuned. What, like one, I mean, you're already telling us we can be curious. We
Mhm.
have to be curious. That's part
Yeah,
of
yeah.
our fabric of being therapists. Um, Anything else that would be really helpful for us who we want to be like just more there?
Yeah, I think network with other clinicians, ask them questions, listen to their podcasts. There are a lot of clinicians that have different podcasts that maybe even stepping outside of your comfort zone a little bit. If there's something that you've never heard about, try listening to that. I think for us, it's again that growth mindset, continuing to allow yourself to grow, not just in your own comfort zone of like, I want to learn more about EMDR, so I'm going to do that. But yeah, it's more than that, right? Yes, I can get certification and grow in those areas, but what about when it comes to the connection piece? Because to me, no matter what techniques you use, the most important piece of the therapy is going to be your relationship with your client. So it's beyond the EMDR, the IVS, and all the things. I mean, we can get all the certifications that we want. And I was just telling my one of my supervisees that the other day because she was like, I have such an array of clients, and all of them have so many different symptoms and issues that I'm wanting. I have like 5 different books on this subject, 6 different books on that subject. I'm trying to learn. I'm like, let's pause. You can always learn those different skills and techniques, but I really want you to emphasize your relationship with your clients, right? And so stepping out of our comfort zone to talk with other clinicians who might be from a similar background as your client so that you can understand more, especially if you don't really know a whole lot. Asking questions, uh, networking in those kinds of ways, taking some classes or listening to some things that you have no idea and may not even be that like may not want to specialize in it, but it just allows you to have a different experience. And then obviously travel, like I feel like
Travel.
when you
Yeah.
travel you learn so much more.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's so true. Travel is so
Mhm.
powerful. Especially if you're open to it, like
Yeah,
open to
yeah.
the experience. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
And
think it's so cool.
oh, yeah, go ahead.
Lately I've been seeing more people in our field, having these experiences where you can get your CUs when you're over in Japan, and we're going to do 2 weeks in Japan, and we're all going to come together as mental health professionals to experience the culture, but also learn and all. And I think that's amazing. Obviously, it's not always doable for a lot of people, but the fact that it's happening at all is exciting.
Absolutely, absolutely. And even as you say that of what we can do, I
Mhm.
think also there's that personal piece because many of us are hesitant to maybe learn more about our own cultures or to share it, right?
Mhm.
That shame is still present no matter
Mhm.
what. And so
Absolutely.
that's another way of kind of coming out and creating some of that attunement, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you don't need all of those things to attune with your clients because it still boils down to safety. And so as I stay curious, as I stay authentic with my clients and make it a point to really walk with them, not in front of them, then there is still that safe space. And that does open up a whole lot more opportunities for growth and healing. But the things that we do to enhance that experience is, I think, so vital. It's not necessary to do those things if you don't have access to that, or you don't have the time, or you don't have the resources. You don't have to do it. But if you can, I think it would be so much more valuable and so much more enhancing.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. This has
Mhm.
been such gold. I've loved our conversation, Katie, and getting to know you. Just want to acknowledge you for this amazing work you're doing in the field
Yeah,
for many,
thank you.
many years and
Yeah.
training therapists and bringing so much honesty and vulnerability to our
Mhm.
conversation today about showing up authentically to
Mhm.
honor our clients, ourselves, and the broader context of our cultures and histories and our humanity. Thank you
Mhm.
so much. And
Of course.
please let everyone know more about you and where they can find you and all those good things.
Absolutely. So I am located in Frisco, Texas. That's part of the Dallas Fort Worth area, and I we do both in person and virtual sessions as well. My website is Cognitive Revival. That's my practice name. So it's www.cognitiverevival.com. We do have a very diverse team, which I love. I love being because I learn from they are my associates and my interns, but I love being able to learn from them just as much as I feel like I can guide them and provide my own experiences and knowledge and wisdom. I love to be able to learn from them as well. So it's great. It's great being able to have that. But yeah, and also we do enjoy being able to do more outreach because there is such a large community of people who don't know that these types of practices exist, that they may not be aware of decolonized approaches, justice oriented approaches. And when I tell you, when I talk with some of my friends, personal friends, and even colleagues, like I've talked with a lot of my colleagues of color where they've never heard of decolonized therapy. They don't know that exists because we kind of exist in our own little bubble. And then as new things are coming out, we're learning about trainings and stuff like that, but we're not really learning about like any kinds of practices that go beyond like westernized approaches. So collective care, justice oriented, that's still there's still so many people who are not aware of it. So I love to do podcasts to share about that, to make people aware that that is out there. I love to do community outreach to help people understand that there are these types of practices, and more people are getting involved in it. More and more people are getting the training they need to be able to provide a more culturally responsive care. And
Mhm.
I'd love for people in the field to be able to have access to that as well so they can also grow.
Yes, that's such an amazing gift. And you can even do like education for other therapists
Mhm.
who are wanting to better understand how to
Mhm.
be more,
Yeah,
culturally
yeah,
responsive, or, some of the members of your team are, they have their own cultures. And so there's
yeah,
so
yeah.
much of a wealth of knowledge.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. And there's no like it's endless. So you can just you can always keep growing,
Yeah.
keep
Oh,
learning. So yeah.
that's
Yeah.
great. So people can reach out to you through your website,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
I'm wondering, like, would you even consult with other practices on?
Absolutely.
Cool, very cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So all of my contact information is on the website.
okay, great. Cognitiverevival.com.
Yeah.
Katie Law, thank you so much, and really just appreciate everything you shared, and thank you for all the great work you're putting out there.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
Thank you
So
so Cindy. It's been an honor. I really enjoy being able to
Pleasure.
sit here and converse with you. I mean, it flows, we're not sitting here and it's not forced. It's just, it flows. It's conversational. And I love that. I love being
Yeah,
able to just have our, laid back Friday afternoon, casual conversation, but yet still learn with each other.
exactly. We meant to say that earlier. So before we
Yeah.
close, right? We are authentic coming at the end of a long week, long days for
Yes.
both
Yeah.
clinicians and supervisors and doing all these things. And so we're like, oh, we'll just show up naturally and be authentic. And you got a little of that radical authenticity today.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a
Okay.
pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank
And thank
you.
you to everybody listening.
Yes. All the best to everyone. And remember, until next week, keep it simple and keep showing up. Thanks for listening to A Simple Therapy podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, please subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who needs it. Your support means so much. You can learn more or get in touch at asimpletherapypodcast.com. And remember, let's keep it simple and keep showing up.